Welcome to Capital City Beads. My name is Christina, and in this video we will be making a pair of hoop earrings with a decorative beaded edge. This design is great for beginners interested in getting started with bead weaving. We'll be doing a modified brick stitch to attach the beads to the hoop. You can use this weaving technique on any metal frame shape to create your own unique designs. For beads, you will need one strand of 3mm Firepolished beads, 48 beads total. Size 11 seed beads in one or two colors of your choice, and a size 8 seed bead. I'll be attaching the beads to a 30mm electroplated brass hoop earring using 6-pound Fireline. Fireline thread is a bit more stiff and rigid than a nylon thread like Nymo and will help this design hold its shape. You will also need a size 12 beading needle and a pair of chain nose pliers. To get started, we need to prep the hoop earring. The end of the hoop earring that goes into the ear is sticking straight up. We need to gently bend that wire down a little to make it easier to put these earrings through the ear once finished. I also like to give the looped clasp at the end a little squeeze so that loop is not so large and the earrings are more secure. Start by cutting 3 feet of Fireline. Size 12 beading needles have a super tiny eye, and these can be a little tricky to thread. You can use your chain nose pliers to gently flatten the tip of the Fireline to make it easier to thread into your needle. The trick is to hide the very tippy tip of that thread between your thumb and pointer finger so that all you see is a tiny little speck. Lay the eye of the needle right onto that tiny little speck and push it through. We are not doubling up this thread, just pull it through enough to have a little to grab onto while you're working. Secure the opposite end of the thread to the hoop earring by tying it into a double knot around the wire. Leave at least a 4-inch tail so we have enough extra thread to tie it off once we're finished beading. You want to leave about a 1/2 inch of wire between the end of the hoop and the knot. You cannot bead around the entire wire or there'll be no room for the earlobe once you try to put these on. The knot can easily slide around the wire at this point, so it's easy to adjust the distance between the end of the hoop and your knot. If this is your second earring, you can use the first one as a guide to line it up so that they're positioned correctly. Now that our thread is attached, we can get started with some beads. We are going to start by stringing on 1 Firepolished bead, 1 size 11 seed bead, and 1 more Firepolished bead. Keep the beads on your needle rather than pushing them down the thread. Pass that needle under the hoop wire. I use my thumb and my pointer finger to stabilize the hoop and keep the beads positioned on the outside of the wire while I pull the thread all the way through. Pass your needle in front of the wire and back up through that second Firepolished bead. Your thread should loop around the wire, securing the beads to the hoop. The holes of the beads should be positioned on the wire and facing out with the size 11 seed beads popping up between the Firepolished beads. Next, string on 1 size 11 and 1 Firepolish. Keep the beads on the needle and pass the needle under the hoop wire. Use your fingers to help keep the beads positioned outside the wire while you pull the thread all the way through. Pass your needle in front of the wire and back up through the Firepolished bead. The Firepolished beads should all be facing the same direction with the size 11 beads popping up in between them. Repeat these steps and continue adding beads the exact same way till you have added 24 fire polish beads along the edge. If you're using a different style wire frame, make sure you add an even number of beads for this design to work out properly. Be mindful of your tension and keep the fire polish beads lined up tightly next to each other. They may seem a little floppy around the wire at this point, but that's okay. Once we get to the end and everything is attached, it's much more stable, and for extra protection, we will secure the thread with a dab of glue to prevent the beaded design from moving around on the wire. Go ahead and hit pause and come back when you have 24 fire polish beads attached to the wire. Now that we have 24 fire polish beads attached, we're ready for the next row. You should be coming straight out of that last fire polish bead. Pass your needle through the first size 11 seed bead. String on one size 8 seed bead and pass your needle through the next size 11 seed bead. We're going to be adding size 8 seed beads between all of the size 11 seed beads. Add one more size 8 and go through the next size 11. Make sure to pull your thread all the way through after each pass to keep your tension tight. Go ahead and hit pause and come back when you've come to the opposite end of the earring and have added a size 8 seed bead between all of the size 11 seed beads. Once you have added your last size 8 bead, your thread should be coming out of that last size 11. We need to reverse and go back the other way, but first we need to secure the thread before we can do this. To secure the thread, pass your needle down the last fire polish bead. Go under the wire, wrapping the thread around the hoop, and pass your needle back up the fire polish bead. Pass your needle through the first size 11 and first size 8 seed bead. Pull all the way through. Next, add 3 size 11 seed beads and pass your needle through the next 2 size 8 seed beads. Pull tight and let those 2 size 8 beads come together. Add 3 more size 11 seed beads and go through the next 2 size 8 seed beads. Pull tight and check that your middle seed bead is poking out in a little triangle. Continue adding 3 seed beads and passing through 2 size 8 beads till you've come to the end of the hoop earring. Add your last set of 3 seed beads and go through that final size 8 bead. I've already made my second earring, and before tying off and finishing this design, I want to make sure that both of the earrings line up and are positioned in the same spot. I also didn't bend my wire on my first earring, but I'm going to go ahead and do that now before I complete this project. Use one of the earrings as a guide, lay them on top of each other, and make sure that the beads are positioned in the same space. At this point, you can still scooch the beads around a little bit on the wire, so if you need to adjust it, just gently scooch them around the wire until they're positioned where you want them to be. To tie off this thread, pass your needle through the last size 11 and down through the fire polish bead. Wrap your needle under the wire and back up through the fire polish bead, as well as the first size 11 and the first size 8, and all 3 of the size 11 beads. Your needle should be coming out of the second size 8 bead. It's not super important that you end up exactly where I'm telling you to go. You just need to be between 2 beads. I think it's easiest to go between the size 8 beads, but you could tie a hitch knot between any beads as long as when you're moving your needle through, you're not crossing or skipping any beads and you don't see any thread crossing over your beads. So now that I'm positioned between that size 8, I'm going to pass my needle under the size 8 bead. You're not going in any bead hole, just under the size 8. Slowly pull your thread, and before you pull it all the way through, stop and pass your needle into that loop it creates. Gently pull tight, allowing that small hitch knot to tighten between the beads. You should not see any thread wrapping around the beads. Pass your needle through the next series of beads until you're coming out of the 4th size 8 seed bead. You might not be able to get through a lot of beads at once, so if you have to go through one bead at a time and pull through to get there, no problem at all. It's a little tricky when it starts to get this tight. Just make sure you're not skipping any beads and you don't see the thread crossing or passing over any of the beads. The thread should be hidden. Tie another hitch knot by going under the size 8 bead. You're not going in any bead hole, just under the beads. Before you pull all the way through, pass your needle back down through the loop it creates and tie that hitch knot gently between the beads. Finish off this thread by going through a few more beads, and then you're ready to trim it off and secure the other side. Trim off that thread as close as possible and take your needle off and put it onto the tail from the beginning of the project. Thread your needle onto the fire line. If you need to smash the fire line to help get it in there, highly recommend. Or trim it if it's frayed. We're going to tie off the tail from the beginning in the same way we just tied off our working thread. Thread the needle onto the tail. Wrap the thread around the wire and back up through the fire polish bead. Pass your needle under the size 11 bead and stick the needle back through the thread loop, tying that hitch knot between the beads. Pass your needle down through a few more beads to secure the end of that thread. Trim off your excess thread and cut it as close as possible so you don't see any extra thread sticking out. To help keep the beads in place and prevent them from sliding around, you can add a small dab of jewelry glue on the first and last thread of the ear wire. I'm using Hypo Cement. It has a fine needle applicator, and this will help keep the beads in place and prevent them from moving around. Let that dry for at least 10-15 minutes before you try wearing these earrings. Enjoy your new beaded hoop earrings. All the beads and supplies I used in this video can be found at CapitalCityBeads.com. I've written out a materials list and added links to the supplies, and they can be found in the description of this video. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and subscribe to our channel at CapitalCityBeads. If you enjoyed making this, please give us a tag at CapitalCityBeads. I would love to see what you create.